Daniel wasn't supposed to be home that night. He had told me he'd be away until Sunday, and I let myself believe I had more time to figure things out, more time to convince myself that what I was doing wasn't wrong. But time had run out. I heard the door open before I saw him. A quiet click, followed by the sound of footsteps. My heart stilled. For a moment I thought it could be a neighbor, maybe even my imagination playing tricks on me. But then I turned, and there he was. Daniel stood in the doorway. His travel bag still slung over one shoulder. His face unreadable. His dark brown eyes flicked from me to Ethan, who was sitting beside me on the couch. Ethan's shirt lay crumpled on the floor. The scent of sweat and perfume clung to the air, thick with betrayal. Ethan jumped up immediately, scrambling for his clothes, stammering something I couldn't even process. But Daniel didn't look at him. He didn't even acknowledge his presence. His gaze was locked onto mine, and in that moment I wished, more than anything, that he would scream, that he would lash out, curse, throw something, anything. Because that would have been easier than this silence. My voice came out small, broken. Daniel, He raised a hand, stopping me before I could say anything else. His bag slid off his shoulder, landing softly on the floor. Every movement was slow, deliberate, as if he was holding himself together with sheer force of will. Ethan stood frozen in the corner of the room, half-dressed, unsure whether to run or stay. I should go, he mumbled. Daniel still didn't look at him. Ethan hesitated for only a second longer before grabbing his shoes and slipping past him out the door. The apartment felt impossibly quiet now. I tried to breathe, but it felt like my lungs had collapsed, like no words I could say would ever be enough to fix this. Daniel didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. He should have been furious. He had every right to be. But his eyes only looked tired. I came home early, he finally said. His voice unsettlingly calm. I wanted to surprise you. I swallowed hard. Daniel, He let out a quiet chuckle, but there was no humor in it. It's funny, he mused. I always thought that if this ever happened, I'd be angry. I thought I'd yell, throw things, demand answers. He shook his head. But I don't feel any of that. His voice was steady. Too steady. And that scared me more than if he had exploded. I just feel tired. That was when it truly hit me. The weight of what I had done. Not in some grand, dramatic way. But in the way his shoulders slumped. In the way his voice cracked, just slightly, at the end of his sentence. I had destroyed something we had built for years. And I had done it carelessly. Selfishly. I never wanted to hurt you, I whispered. He exhaled, running a hand over his face, and for the first time he looked away from me. But you did. The silence between us was suffocating. I wanted to say something, anything, to reach for him to explain, though I didn't even know what excuse I could possibly give. But before I could speak, he turned and walked to the dresser. My stomach dropped as I watched him pull open the top drawer and take out a small velvet box. My breath caught. I'd seen that box before. A few weeks ago, tucked in the back of his drawer while I was looking for a pair of socks. I hadn't opened it, but I had known. I had imagined the moment he would kneel before me, the way I would cry and say yes, how perfect everything would be. Daniel flipped the box open, revealing a simple yet beautiful diamond ring inside. His fingers trembled as he held it up between us. His expression unreadable. I was going to propose this weekend, he said quietly. I spent months planning it. Tears blurred my vision, my throat tightening to the point of pain. Daniel, please. He shut the box with a quiet snap and slipped it back into his pocket. He exhaled slowly, as if reminding himself to breathe. Then, finally, he looked at me one last time. I hope he was worth it, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Then he turned and walked out the door. He never came back. And that, more than anything, shattered me.